on three things. One, topical, the science. Two, the international framework. And three, the need for a step change and what, for the Committee on Climate Change, that means in terms of actions for a new government. So just very quickly, the science of climate change. I had stopped talking about a long time ago. Obviously, there's been controversies recently, and I think that's brought it back onto the agenda, and I think there is a need to get the message back out there, notwithstanding the controversies. The fundamental science applies still, so climate change is happening, very highly likely to be man-made. There's a very significant risk that if we don't do anything, then there will be adverse impacts for human welfare, and we have the opportunity to do something about it. So there's a message to get out there. I don't think we need to dwell on that message. We know that the science can turn people off. I think we quickly have to move on to the opportunity. But I've heard people recently say, well, we don't care about the science. Let's leave that and let's just build a low-carbon economy anyway. And I think without the science, it's a house of cards. So it's important to get that message back established and accepted. Now, the other topical thing is the international framework. And I think it's fresh in people's minds, although that's going further into the past, that Copenhagen obviously was very disappointing. Didn't result in a legally binding agreement, which was the objective going into Copenhagen. But there are some positive things to come out of it. We've got the Copenhagen Accord in particular. And our early analysis says that if we can bank all of the commitments made under the Copenhagen Accord by all of the major emitting economies, then we'll be on the downward path for global emissions by 2020, which is consistent with the climate change objective that underpins our domestic legislation, the Climate Change Act, here in the UK. So there's a positive coming out of Copenhagen in the form of the Accord. There's a real challenge over the rest of this year and next year, possibly the year after, getting that legally binding agreement. I think we'll get it. I hope we will move closer to it in COP16 in Mexico in November and December this year. But if you put together the science, if you put together what's happening internationally, I think the case for action is strong. I think what is it that we can do here in the UK? And beyond that, what is it that we can do in Europe? Well, all of the people from other countries who come to visit me say they want to see a low-carbon economy in practice. And we haven't got that anywhere in the world. We haven't got it in the UK. We're very well placed to build a UK low-carbon economy and to show other countries that that can go hand in hand with growth and prosperity. The opportunities are there, and we've known about those for a long time. So the opportunity to save money through energy efficiency, through early emissions reductions when those are cheap rather than later when they're expensive, through investing in the right technologies that won't be stranded in 10 and 20 years time, the opportunities for green jobs to enhance security of supply and air quality and health, and a whole range of co-benefits. So there's a very positive story, which I say we move on from the science to the opportunity. And then you say, well, have we done anything in this country? We've got the Climate Change Act, which is a world-class piece of legislation. I think we've talked a good game for many years. But if you look at the emissions data over the period for which we have talked a good game, so 2003 to 7, before the recession, what you can see is emissions didn't really go down. If you look at carbon dioxide, they went down about 0.5% every year. And if you think about what we have to achieve going forward, it's about 3% every year. So 6 times more going forward relative to what we've achieved in the past. And that's why we said we need a step change here in the UK. Emissions have gone down in the recession, and that's not surprising. We projected it in our first report to Parliament, and I don't think it's because we've suddenly got a load of policies that are delivering sustainable emissions reductions across the economy. We'll talk more about that in our report to Parliament in June this year, but I think it's fair to say we still need a step change, notwithstanding the emissions reductions in 2009. So what is it that will drive this step change? It's not the current policies, which haven't delivered. It's new policies, and let me pick 3 for you. We've highlighted, first of all, the need for a national programme for residential energy efficiency improvement that takes out the transaction costs from insulating your home, for example, that makes it easy, that all of us do it together and we can see our neighbours doing it, and we want to do it through economies of scale in that national programme. Second, we haven't got a set of arrangements to decarbonise the power sector. That's absolutely central that we introduce new arrangements, given that power sector decarbonisation is the key to wider economy decarbonisation. So we need new arrangements. That's a fundamental policy shift relative to, for example, the policy of the last 20 years, but as restated not long ago in the 2007 Energy White Paper. The third thing is electric cars and electric vans are the most promising option for taking transport emissions right down over the next 10 and 20 years. Now, electric cars are coming to market. They are increasingly competitive. They will be over the next 10 years. The challenge is to get a battery charging network in place, and that is a job for government. So 3 key policies. There's a whole range of other ones. Whether you're talking about energy efficiency improvement in non-residential buildings, so SMEs in particular, public sector buildings, whether you're talking about renewable heat, where we haven't had a lot of success, whether you're talking about conventional cars and those becoming more efficient, whether you're talking about vans, where there is an evolving EU framework, but we haven't done a lot there up to now. You can also talk about, for example, smarter choices, getting people onto public transport. There hasn't been a lot of effort on that. Land use planning is another big and explored area. Agriculture, we have very little in the way of incentives to drive emissions down there. So a whole set of policies, but I've picked those 3. In terms of going forward, we have made progress over the last month. There's a lot more to do. We have a strong sense of what it is that needs to be done, and what we need now is political will to drive through an implementing framework. It needs political will, leadership. For us, this is not going to happen from the bottom up. It can't be driven just by businesses, or just by individuals, or just by households. It has to have the rules of the game very clearly stated in a way that will only come about if we have that political will. So I think it's all to play for, because the costs of doing this are relatively small. We estimate less than 0.5% of GDP in 2020. There's a whole range of benefits which I've already talked about. So we will work with the government of the day after the election to try to make sure there is a focus on driving this step change. Let me leave you with those 3 policies. A national programme for residential energy efficiency improvement, reform of the electricity market arrangements, and the rollout of an electric vehicle battery charging network. For me, those are the 3 key priorities for a new government to focus on. Thank you.